Okay, Mike, thanks for sending me your swinging mate. So let's give you a quick analysis so that we're both singing off the same hymn sheet, if you like. Let's get the right swing on. Okay, so let's think about it like this. We'll give you the rundown with your posture and also the camera angle. This one on the right, your camera angle's coming in a bit from this angle. Next time, make sure, imagine if you've got a stick in the middle of your stance, make sure the camera's kind of facing that, so it's kind of face on, right? The camera's kind of in front of you, pointing back a little bit, so it's a bit difficult to pick up the correct movements going back and coming down with your body particularly. But most of what we're going to work on is to do with your hands. So yeah, quick little analysis. So good setup. Really like your setup. You've got a nice angle in your spine here. I like how this is kind of bent over with your upper body. Bit of knee bend. You look evenly balanced with over your heels and the balls of your feet. So that's great. There's the line coming down from just underneath your armpits is just outside your knee. So all your setup looks good, right? And then as we start going back, hands are going a little bit outside the line, aren't they? So you're picking the club up a little bit. There's a bit too much roll in those forearms. That your wrists are rolling too much. Your hands are rolling. And you can see instead of your hands moving back inward, you can see if anything, if that's your toe line, your hands are actually moving a bit away from you. So they're kind of moving a little bit on the outside on that very first bit there, right? And you can see how your left arm now is kind of away from your left shoulder. You see all the pros. I'll pull some pros up in a minute. The left arm tends to be more inward, going this way, all right? So that's what's happening in the takeaway. And then, of course, as you do that, your left shoulder's a little bit too high. So at this point, the club head's low and the club head's also inside your hands, right? So then what happens is because you've kind of lost your connection with your left arm, because your left arm's out here rather than more inward, as you get to the top, your hands are just a little bit too high. If you look at where your hands are here, I mean, if we draw a line over here, you can see how your hands are well above your head. Okay, so left arm is way too more on a vertical plane than actually matching your shoulders up. All right. So it's a little high going back, but you do a great job of dropping that club head down. You do a great job of lagging it and getting it back on plane, coming down and coming into the ball. It's nicely from the inside. But you can see through impact here, there's a lot of club face rotation, isn't there? So I'm guessing with all this club face rotation going on, you're starting the ball to the left. I'm guessing your miss is going to be to the left, maybe over curving. So you're kind of starting it slightly left. And in fact, let's get some lines down. So let's say there's your toes. Alright, so let's say that's where you're trying to hit it. So if we actually look where the ball's starting, yeah, so you can see the ball starting slightly left of that line, right? So there's lots of club face rotation through the shot. That right hand is really turning over. And then you can see up here as well how the club face is just a little bit closed to the shaft plane. So most of it is what's going on with your hands, buddy. All right. Again, from this position, nice setup. You look like your knees are kind of coming outwards. You've got your toes pointing out a little bit. I like that sort of stuff. Grip's very good. Setup's very good. But if we put a line there, we put a line just outside your right leg, you can see there's a bit of a bump, isn't there? If you watch your head in that first bit in the takeaway, there's a bit of a bump with your head. All right. So that just tells me your left shoulder's moving a bit too high. the club head during your takeaway is moving a little bit too much, right, in conjunction with everything else. Now obviously the club head moves first, we know that, right? But we also know that your hands are kind of coming outward this way instead of moving inward, right, inside your toe line. Right, but then you get to the top, high hands, we know that. Do a great job of lagging it. I mean, that's excellent how you do that. That's an excellent move, right? Post nicely on your left side, but then through the shot. Okay, you watch just how much rotation you've got going on with that right hand there. Okay. So I think to start with, Martin, and then you can see how flippy you are here, right? You can see how much that right hand's come through, how much that shaft's moved through, right? And this right arm's a little bent, left arm's a little bent, and then the club's sort of up here, right? So basically, Mike, there's lots of club face rotation, right? So I think for the first lesson, you know, if we try and help you with your club face rotation, I think that's what we should focus on, right? If anything, we want to try and push the ball a little bit, so it starts out here, right? And a straight push is acceptable, but if we can kind of curve it back round with a tiny little draw, then that's the optimum shot, right? So just a little bit too much flicking going on with your hand. So let's talk about it. So if we're talking about what the hands are doing, we might as well do the whole thing, not just impact. Okay, so if we pull a pro up here, and I've deliberately pulled Charlie Wee up because he does this probably the best out of anyone. Now, if you watch his hands during the takeaway, all right, watch what his hands do. His hands are not moving along his toe line. Okay, so do that again. Right, his hands are moving inward. And you can see how he's not trying to roll his hands round this way like what you're doing. You see that? So let's pay attention to your right hand. All right, so yes, okay, your right palm's facing where we want to hit it, but by this point, okay, your right palm is now kind of pointing over here. Well, if you watch his right palm, I mean, at this point, his right palm's still kind of pointing down here, right? Totally different. So his right hand's still very much on top of it, whereas your right hand's to the side, okay? And then you can see what's happened because he's moved his hands inward, right, and he's dragging his hands inward, then his left arm is going to start to move inward as well, keeping his connection, right? Whereas you're a little bit kind of, you're rolling your hands this way, and therefore your left arm comes out a bit straight this way as well. So look at your left arm in that position, look at his left arm, right? His left arm's a lot more inward. Okay, so it's all to do with hand path, all right? Basically, we need your hands moving more inward so that by the time you get to the top, well, first of all, in takeaway, the club head is going to be outside of your hands, okay, whereas yours isn't. Yours is underneath and inside, all right? And because you haven't got much connection in your left arm, then your hands can get very high, okay? His hands have moved inward, left arm's more inward, and then by the time he gets to the top, his left arm is matching his shoulder plane. Okay, very important at the top. Okay, we've got to get our left arm matching our shoulder plane. Okay, now, so that's a good thought for the backswing, Mike. All right, we just very simply get a line or get a club across your toes and start pulling your hands more inward. Okay, it's going to feel like your hands are lower and your left arm's more deeper at the top of your swing. All right, now if we do, let me pull your other swing up, and yeah, we'll get me up for this. All right, now you can see how coming through the shot, what's going on is there's a lot of flick with that right hand. Okay, so even in this position, you can see how already the club head has kind of outraced your hands already. Right? If we pull a great example, pull someone like Robert Rock up, and you watch him hit the ball. Right, shaft's always leading, always leading, always leading. And I think the best thing for you to think about is just to not release the club head. All right, you're deliberately throwing that right hand into it, releasing the club head, turning that toe over. Right, you need to start feeling the toe not turn over. All right, so if we stop him here, you can see how he's got more of a straighter line with his left arm and the club, whereas just after impact here with you, that club head has already outraced your hands. And then in this position, look how much that shaft has gone through and that right hand's turned over. You watch Rocky here, you know, when his right arm's parallel with the ground, the shaft is kind of in parallel with the ground as well. Right? When your arm's parallel with the ground here or just past it, you can see how this club head has been flicked through. Right? So a great drill for you would be to practice coming down and through, and practice as you come down, practice bowing your left wrist. Right? That's the kind of feeling I want to see you through the shot, because if you're feeling like you're bowing your left wrist, your right wrist has got to stay bent here. Right? Right wrist has got to stay bent for longer. And then if you can practice coming through and hitting shots like that, where you're almost feeling as though there's no release and the club head staying low down here, I think that would be a great sensation for you, just to take all of that right hand out the shot. Right? I think that's the main thing that's letting you down at the moment. We just need to educate these hands a little bit better. All right. So that's your drill. This is called the flying wedge drill, where we're just coming through and we're just, you've got like a wedge kind of angle with your right arm and the club. Whereas at the moment your right arm's here and the club head is already up here. So you've had to flick this right hand into it to get the club into that position. Right? So to make a change, you need to exaggerate the opposite of what you're doing. Right? So the opposite of what you're doing is this over here. Right? Whereas you've got this going on. Make sense? So little drills, start off with your wedge, practice these little shots like this, and then as you come through and you gradually move into a longer swing, right, and you go into a full swing, practice coming through the short shots first, practicing this angle, right, and then when you go into longer shots and longer swings, well, the objective is to try and keep your arms straight all the way through, right, and the club head does the releasing, right? The club head does the releasing as your left hand turns over, right? I think you're just focusing a little bit too much on what your right hand's doing, whereas I want you to control the club face more with your left hand and turn it over with your left hand, all right? But a great sensation through the shot, like I said, would be something like that sort of feeling, where you're trying to keep it bowed. Okay, Mike, so those few things, take it inward, going back, and then just try and control your right hand, make your right hand a little bit more passive through impact. And I think that's a great starting point for you. Any questions or comments, please use the message centre below, and we'll get a conversation going. All right, cheers, Mike.